Drop that fucking gun.
Val,
Drop that fucking gun. I'm
okay,
fucking
Val,
serious,
this
bro.
This is it. Let's just do this. Come on, you ready?
No.
Val, I fucking love you so much. I love you so fucking much, dude. Two?
Kevin, look, you're fucking
Why?
now.
Val, I thought this is exactly what you wanted, right? It's your chance to finally say fuck you to the boss, right? Fuck you!
Kevin.
Say it, Val. Fuck you!
Kevin, lower the fucking
Val,
gun.
Val, come on.
Fucking gun.
This is it, okay? This is it now.
Stop.
All right. So, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Will It Be a Classic? Today, I got my buddy Tyler back on here after it's been a hot minute since you've been on this channel, I think.
Yeah, it has. I know we had I think, what was the last one? Hereditary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, that was like 2 years ago. Yeah. Yeah, today we are going to be talking about a movie called On the Count of Three that has sort of become probably one of my favorite movies in the last couple of months. And everything about this movie kind of just screams like this is a movie that I would like. And this also seems like a movie that you would like, and that's why I want to talk about it with you, because I was like, this seems like a movie for both of us.
I will say the second watch, I got a lot more out of it than the first time.
Same.
Because I think you said it to me, at the beginning of spring or something like that?
Yeah. I watched it, I think, like end of March.
Yeah, because I want to say I saw you posting about it on Instagram a lot and everything. I think the first day I went fishing this year was the day you sent it. So it was like just kind of warming up. So it had to be like April, May, something like that. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I loved it. The second time I watched it, I definitely got a lot more out of it. It's when like, since I already had known the ending, it was a lot easier for me to focus on the characters and like the different signals and signs that like they're kind of showing throughout the movie of like what's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I wasn't sure how it was going to end the first time, of course, because you don't know, blah, blah, blah. But like, so I think I was also focusing on the end. And I think like individual scenes of like what they're doing. Well, I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead, but like say individual scenes with key characters from their past stood out a lot more to me on the second go round and everything.
100%.
And I remember we did the little guessing game of like who we thought each other was back in the day. I'm not saying now and everything. I think I changed my mind.
I don't know. Rewatching it, I was sort of like, you and I kind of, there's a lot of stuff that each character does that like kind of like there's certain scenes where Vale, who's played by see if I can pronounce his name right, Jared Carmichael, and there's like a lot of stuff that he does that I'm like, yeah, that's Tyler. And then there's scenes that like he'll do that I'm like, that's kind of me. But then there's scenes where Kevin, who's played by Christopher Abbott, where he'll do something and I'm like, that's 100% me. But then there's other times where he does something and I'm like, it's 100% Tyler.
All right, so my kind of quick take on that is that I think Vale is more me in general, per se.
Yeah.
But I think he's can be more of a downright pessimist at times. And at those kind of scenes where he's being very pessimistic, I go, all right, I'm feeling Mark on these vibes right now. Not say you're pessimistic in general, but when you're feeling that type of way, you definitely ride the pessimistic trail on that.
100%.
And if I were to guess from on your angle, the other character whose name is escaping me, you just said it, but Kevin, I feel like the general aspect I was thinking was him, but then he can be kind of like hyper and erratic. And then in which case I go, okay, that kind of feels like me.
Yeah, like again, there's just like the scene where Kevin puts on Papa Roach and Val turns it off. I'm like, that definitely seems like I would be someone to put on like some music and you'd be like, nah, turn that shit off. It's corny. Don't do that.
All right, but for Vale being you, he said at the very beginning of the movie, he goes, for someone who just tried to kill himself 3 days ago, are you really giving me a pep talk right now?
Yeah, for sure. No, 100%. Yeah, the movie has a lot of humor yet it's, I mean, it breaks my heart every time I watch it now. But it's a movie about two best friends who basically decide that they're gonna commit suicide together. Um,
Fair
and
warning, we're just only referencing our emo past. It's not us now.
um, but so they decide that they're gonna kill themselves together. And they decide that on their final day, they're going to do certain things that they wouldn't normally do, like confront Val's father, confront Kevin's child therapist that clearly had some sort of abuse going on. Um, Trying to think, deal with
The
Val's,
girlfriend.
yeah, baby mama played by Tiffany Haddish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's such a great fucking movie. Like, and I think it's funny how it kind of it flips so much back and forth. Like the first time you watch it, um, you don't know which one of these guys is gonna like actually kill themselves, or if both of them will, or what. Because early in the movie, there is that scene where they're both behind the strip club and they're like holding the gun to each other. Um, and Kevin just like like pushes the gun away, and Val's just like, I was really in the zone there, man. Like,
And I was gonna break down that whole countdown bullshit. Is such a crazy thing to kind of do because even if you're both for it, it's like even if you count the wrong way, like no matter what, like the odds of them both getting it off the right way
oh
do not seem like good odds at all.
no,
Like already they're like on the three, and the first time he goes to count, the guy goes one, and then Kevin's like one,
one,
and he's like,
yeah,
I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing here, bro? Like,
yeah. Um, so I guess the first question that I want to ask before we get too deep is, um, like overall, like what were your thoughts on this movie the first time you watched it, and then the second time you watched it? Like you said that you kind of appreciated it a little bit more, but like what was sort of your initial take?
so on the first take, I feel like just off the vibe and like the idea of the movie, you're kind of going into it thinking of it more in like a darker sense. So like I think the second time I watched it, I was able to find actually some more humor out of it.
Mm.
And it also definitely helped when I started to pay attention. I'm like, they had a lot of comedic actors that played specific roles in those. Like, all right, so I believe his name is Harry Winkler, who is the Fonz,
Oh,
is the therapist.
Henry Winkler, yeah.
Henry Winkler, yes, thank you. So him, and then the dude's dad, whose name always escapes me. It's like something Smooth or whatever along those lines. But
It's like
he's
DJ
like,
Smooth or something, right?
yeah, and he's like,
JB Smooth, yeah.
yeah, and he's like normally is in like a shit ton of comedy movies. He's like the Capital One guy had an advertisement, everything. So he's normally always playing like a very funny role. And even though he wasn't maybe specifically trying to be funny in that scene, he always kind of comes off with that kind of like cocky, humoristic type of tone to it, everything. So again, serious scenes between both him and the son Val, and then also Henry Winkler and Kevin being his therapist or whatever. But at the same time, on a second watch, you go, I get how this is like almost a dark comedy in a sense, but still has like a real point to it. It's still serious. It still has to have all these kind of things implied into it. It's not like you're supposed to be laughing your ass off watching it. But
Right.
him fighting his dad, I was kind of dying the second
It
time.
was funny, dude. It was no, it was funny. I think one of the scenes that in the movie um that makes me laugh or just like made me fucking lose it was it's in the beginning of the movie when Kevin is talking to whoever like that like social worker is at the psych center that he's in, and and he says like, this is all bullshit, whatever. And then she starts writing. He's just like, "What are you writing, bitch?" And then he's just like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Like, I'm just stressed out."
And he was trying so hard to talk his way out of it. Like,
I
and
know.
then it's just like something just sets him off, and he's like, "Bitch," and he's like, "Oh, I fucked up. I shouldn't have done that." Like he
So
meant the
funny.
bitch. He meant
Yeah.
it, but
Oh yeah. Like he was just like, I want to say like right after that, he's like, "So how much longer do you think I'm gonna be here for?" It's just like, bro, like
and all right, I will say, on a non funny part, I do notice like in some of those key scenes or whatever, they actually have small little things I didn't pay attention to the first time. Like, say, when he's talking to his dad, right before he loses it, his dad starts packing some Camel Blue cigarettes, which is what the dude's smoking the whole time. And I feel like it's not just what he's saying, but as he's packing the cigarettes, you can clearly see Val look right down at those cigarettes. And then that's where he's kind of like, how it's going right now, blah, blah. And then also when the therapist is confronted in the hallway right outside his apartment or whatever, when they start talking and the therapist doesn't act like pretty much the villain that Kevin remembers him as, it almost kind of, and he starts kind of therapist talking to him, it kind of puts him back in that mode where he goes, oh, I don't know what to do at this moment type shit. Whereas saying like they almost view these people in a certain sense, but then once they re-meet these people that they have these deep-seated feelings against, it almost like puts it in a different perspective and they're not sure how to respond at first. Like it's almost like that freeze before a fight or flight.
I was gonna say it feels like they're like frozen in this moment where they've like kind of like regressed to like their younger selves and like don't know really how to act or how to do anything. Like I know when Kevin kind of like rolls up on Henry Winkler and is like kind of ready to shoot him, he just kind of freezes and it's like the only thing he really says is like, you were supposed to help me, not fuck me up more. And it's like I think that's super important. And I think it's interesting too when you watch Henry Winkler's character who like didn't know him, and then the second Kevin says, you were supposed to help me, Henry Winkler's character immediately is like, I know you. You're Kevin, right? I know you. And it's like, as you said, he tries to like kind of therapist him. Yeah. I don't know what the verb for that is, but yeah.
But it's almost like he's like not micromanaged, but it's like he almost takes like it's him trying to control the situation. He goes, oh, I've talked to you before, so I can do this. Kind of like how Val's dead. Like those two different scenes are very mirroring in like a yin yang situation of the friend.
Such a power dynamic. Yeah.
And if you notice, both those scenes end with the friend taking care of.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So like I don't think it was a crowbar, but like maybe a tire iron. I think
it's Kevin, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin starts beating, and then the whole time he's like, "I'm sorry, Mister blah blah blah. Like, I'm sorry, sir, blah blah." Yeah. And then of course Val comes in. He goes, "Oh, you actually shot him," and Val's like, "Oh fuck! Like I know we were gonna do that, but like it's." And Kevin's like, "Thank you, like you did that, like blah blah." Like,
well, and it's crazy too because at that point, when we get to the therapist, Henry Winkler's character, Val has already said he doesn't want to kill himself. Like he was like, Tiffany Haddish is about to have my baby. Like I got to get my shit together. Like I don't want to die. And rewatching, you kind of see Kevin's face sort of be like, oh well, I do. Like more and more. Kevin has been shown reasons to why he has been wanting to kill himself this whole time, and more Val has been shown reasons as to why he doesn't want to, and like what he still has to, kind of like work towards. I think one of like the most poignant lines is when Tiffany Haddish looks at him and is like, "Get a fucking therapist, like do something, like stop getting in your own way."
I love how she says, she goes, "I'm not even going to ask what happened to your face. Karma fucked your face up." And I was like,
yeah, karma fucked your face up.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
And you know what? I think they did a good job of describing, like, I'm sure there's more than two ways, but at least the two ways in this movie, how someone can arrive at that thought process in a sense. And I think it's illustrated very well in the beginning when he first breaks Kevin out of the ward. And Kevin goes, starts trying to pretty much be like, nah, man, like, you got stuff to live for, this and that. And his friend Val's obviously like, no, like you just try to kill yourself. Don't talk to me like that. But then Kevin goes, yeah. But at the same time, he goes, like, pretty much, he goes, what is it? Because of your girlfriend? Like, man, I've lived like this. This is me growing up. Like, this has been my life. I've tried all the different, he starts naming pills. He goes, I've done all these different things. And I'm still arriving at this point. And he goes, and you, blah, blah, like, something's happening right now, kind of was what he was getting at, that like is making you feel this way. Like you can move past this one point. It's a problem you're actually running into that's physical in the real world that maybe you could deal with. Whereas like with him, he's like, there's not one specific thing. I can be mad at people, I'm upset with people, but like, and overall, this is just how I feel, which kind of actually with the ending, which I don't know if we want to spoil or get to the end of that yet, but with how things end up turning out, it makes sense who with the Who or
Oh
what?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And again, look, on this rewatch, I am watching these characters so close because it's again you can see now that like you know the ending. It's like you can see where these characters are making their decisions and their turns. Like the scene where Kevin is in the restaurant and like it seems like Kevin is actually in a better headspace almost than Val is.
Yep.
But then Val leaves, and then the guy from their high school shows up and basically just kind of makes fun of Kevin the whole time. And it's like, like we used to tease this kid, we used to bully this kid, he used to like freak out and scream at people. And you see in Kevin's eyes sort of like a little bit of that like glimmer that he had just for like that small period of time gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And the freak out afterwards, he like beats the fuck out of a
oh
trash can
yeah.
or some shit. He just starts driving. That's when the song comes on. Cut my life into pieces.
I love that scene so much.
And I will say too, I think I shouldn't have laughed this hard at this scene, but both times I watched it, the first time I thought it was funny, but the second time I was dying,
It's
is when
so fun.
Val gets the promotion. And if anything, you go, oh, this is a good moment. This is a good moment. And you just see him sitting there and he's just like, this is my life. I don't want to be here. And the guy goes, do you want to sell mulch the rest of your life? And he goes, no. And he goes, cool, because I'm giving you a promotion. And dude's just like, what the fuck? And he goes to the bathroom, takes his belt off, and proceeds to start trying to hang himself in the toilet stall. And a guy comes in singing that stupid fucking country.
So
It's
funny. I
a
love
great day to be alive. And he's just
Yeah.
sitting there. He's like, I cannot die to this song. And he's like,
Uh-huh.
if anything, this song cannot be going on while I'm dying. And I'm like, I get that. You got to pick a right playlist or something.
No, it's so funny because yeah, he's trying to hang himself. Meanwhile, this guy's singing this like cheery country song. And then the guy looks over at the stall and he's like, is that you, Val? And he's just like, hey Craig. Like, so fucking funny. No, that scene's hilarious. I think that scene does a really good job of showing you how dark this movie is not afraid to go. While also still maintaining this like weird sort of light sense of humor about a lot of it. But I will say that I think this movie is one of the best movies that does like a good representation of depression and suicidal idealization. Like I think
Yeah,
this movie has a very realistic tone to it.
especially with the idea that people think with like, hey, if you're depressed and want to kill yourself, like you're just sitting there crying the whole time. And no, it goes in and out phases. And like even the way they kind of talk to each other, like there's points where like they just start berating each other. He's like, you trailer park trash piece of shit, blah blah blah. He's like, shut the fuck up. And I'm like, nope, that's how it is. It's like, all right, we're both pieces of shit. We both feel this way. Not saying they really are, but like we're both feeling this type of way. And you're gonna say this shit, fuck you too, like blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely can relate to that.
Um, so is there a scene? We're gonna save the ending for a little bit later because that end there's a lot to say about the ending. But is there a specific scene in this movie that just really stood out to you? Was just something that like yeah, like I'm gonna remember this movie forever because of this one scene.
Okay, yes, and I feel like it's not the most important or impactful scene in general to everybody, but I feel like it kind of stood out to me. Is they're at the shooting range, and Kevin's shooting, and he's like, "Oh, this is better than Zola," blah blah blah. And he's shooting, and they pull the little thing back, and he didn't hit it once, and the one time he hit it, it's like the way corner. And Val gets a voicemail from Tiffany Haddish's baby mom, and he goes outside to listen to it. And Val's already saying he feels this way. He's depressed, doesn't want to be here. He wants to die, and all these things. And he listens to the voicemail, and she's like, I've been calling you to say I'm pregnant, blah, blah, blah. And like, you're scared, little boy, this, and that, blah, blah, blah. And she's just going in on him in the voicemail. And you can see in his face, like everything he's saying resonating. It's like really affecting him in a sense. And it kind of points out in my mind, I'm like, he feels that type of way, but he isn't so dead certain on that type of feeling. So him hearing it, reinforcing it, if you think he is the full I'm ready to die pledge thing, you think he'd just take that and go, that's what I thought, I'm going to do this. But instead, he actually gets angry, and it's almost like oh, I'm actually facing what I've been feeling about myself being thrown back in my face, and it does actually upset me, make me angry. It doesn't fuel me. Like, he comes to that point, he goes, oh, I still want to die, blah blah. But at that moment when he's hearing it, he doesn't want to hear that. He
Yeah.
doesn't want. If anything, he wants it to be shown differently that he isn't that way, and just the idea that he's thinking that is what's putting him on this path that he's going on. So the idea that he feels that way when he hears it is, to me, being like, he wasn't so sure it's his own thoughts, and to hear it actually reverberated to him from somebody else, like, shows how deeply it actually cut, to be like, oh, like, he still was kind of teeter totter in that line. He was just in his own thoughts with it. And if it could have been positive, it could have been negative. But either way, him hearing something to reverberate his own thoughts that he's thinking really did kind of like pop that. And that just kind of stood out to me, because like, people can go around thinking a certain way about themselves, but either if it's negatively reinforced or positively unenforced, could kind of push someone in either direction in that sense at that day at any given moment. And people don't know it. So she doesn't know what he's literally planning and going through at that moment. And if she maybe knew that, she might not have said that. But the idea is that you never know what people are going through type stuff. So like, I feel like that whole scene kind of stood out to me, because it's like, I don't know. I felt that was kind of relatable.
Do you think that when Val showed up to Tiffany Haddish's place, and they kind of cut away for a minute and then they cut back, and she's like clearly pissed off at him, do you think Val told her what he was going to do, or just that like he, or you think he was just kind of like giving her money for like the abortion?
Well, I don't think actually I don't think it was either of those things, because I don't think he told her, because one, I feel like she would have probably started berating him more, and it would have been a little more of an angry exit for her or some porch. He was talking about like, oh, there's different ways we can kind of do this, and she goes, no, 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 I'm doing this. This is up to me. You don't have a say in this type shit, which makes me think he might have been giving her money, but I don't know if it was specifically for the abortion. I'm not saying he was for or against the abortion or keeping the baby, but like, I think they probably kind of just talked more about their own bullshit. And on the way out, he was like, well, let me try and talk about the baby. And she was just like, shut him down. She was like, no, no, no. Like, this has nothing to do with you, blah, blah. Which, again, further negative reinforcement. But like, I think it's something more along the lines of them more just hashing out their own bullshit.
Okay, yeah, I can see that, because that is the one scene that I was like, because she seems like so mad at him, and so it's like did Val tell her like, hey, I'm gonna kill myself today, so like here's this bag of money in a McDonald's bag that like, will either help you with the abortion, help you a little bit with the child, even though that couple $100 or whatever that he stole from his dad wasn't gonna do shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so let's go to uh favorite character moments from each character, from Val and then from Kevin.
All right, I'll say for Val, I feel like since he's not the more hyper expressive one, as say Kevin is or some, I feel like there's little moments where he's like kind of gives a face, and it just kind of he's kind of like bitch without saying it. And so like, for one example, he's smoking in the ward, and Kevin, even though he's trying to get out, he's like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this. He's freaking out. And he's like, what do you think, the smoke detector is going to go off? And then the nurse or whatever you want to call her comes in and goes, you can't smoke in here. She grabs it. She goes, what, you thought that was going to get him out or something like that? Kind of being snarky. And then she opens the window to blow the smoke out and walks away. And then as she walks out, Val just kind of looks at him and goes, the window's open, bitch. Like, without saying anything, he just kind of looks. He's like, exactly, motherfucker. And I was like, yes, yes, I enjoy this. I like this. I like this. And as far for Kevin, probably when he pulls the gun out at the station trying to get the gauze and the medical shit.
Yeah, that shit's fucking hilarious.
He's like, oh, you're gonna look at me now? When a customer comes in, you look at me, bitch.
Yeah.
And then he's like, how much is that? And the dude's like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm not robbing you. Just look at me. Like, he's like, I'm not robbing you. Just give me some human decency and look. He just throws some money up there. He goes, keep the change or some shit. Just like walks out. Yes.
No, that's I love that scene. I would say a little similarly. I think my favorite Val moment is still when he goes to the psych center to break Kevin out, but it's when he tells Kevin that he quit his job, and Kevin's like, "What do you mean?" And Val's just like, "When you're a kid, they tell you the worst thing you can do is be a quitter. And he's like, why? Quitting's amazing. It just means you don't have to do something you hate.
Hmm.
And I understand that there's a very positive and a very negative take on that saying. Like you can take it one of two ways. Um, and I kind of love that quote. I think it's such a cool, interesting quote of it spins that phrase of calling someone a quitter kind of on its head for me.
I can see that. And I mean, obviously, like you said, there is a positive and negative sense to that. If you're talking about just generalized with everything, sounds pretty negative. All right,
Yeah,
you can't
oh,
quit it
for
ever.
sure.
But when you're talking about people or things or situations going on in your life, like sometimes people have a hard time, like even myself included, I have a hard time letting go of shit. If I start shit, even if I don't like it, I tend to want to stick with it, at least see some type of outcome come from it or something.
Mm.
So, of course, but then at the same point, there's so many people in this world who are doing something they do not enjoy, they do not like, putting up with situations or people, things, jobs, whatever, that really aren't beneficial to them in any sense of a way. And people are scared of starting over or trying something new because they found a path that they're on and they think they have to see that out. And I do think it is a positive idea to take a step back and go, if this is not bringing you enjoyment or fulfillment, or it's having a negative outcome on you, then yeah, quit. And there's nothing wrong with quitting if it's the right thing or
Yeah,
so to do for you in that situation. Now, of course, if you generalize it towards everything,
it's bad.
well, yeah, like I mean, yeah, like you got to have some type of point in your life. You have something you're working for. You got to have some situations that are good, and sometimes just because something's not working out for you right then in that sort of moment, I'm not specifically just talking about a job, but like it doesn't always mean quitting is the best option. If you quit everything you start to try, you'll never get a fulfillment out of an outcome of something that you're working towards to. So yeah, I definitely take that with a 50-50 and like use hesitation when using that quote towards what's going on with your life type thing.
I just thought it was really poignant, and I think it obviously is in context of the movie. It's like pretty fucking deep. I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then as for the favorite Kevin moment, um, yeah, I mean, I might be right there with you when he pulls the gun out on the clerk. Either that or yeah, when he's like yelling at the social worker in the psych center. Um,
Because kind of in a sense to me, going off of the dude seen him at the diner and talking about how he used to fuck with this kid, blah blah blah. It seems to me that Kevin probably did not stand up for himself a lot in his life,
oh,
did not take control of situations, and not to say that the gas station clerk not paying him attention at first is the right time to do that, but that was kind of him getting like a sense of control. Like I did this before, whatever outcome I got, a moment of no, like I'm a person, you're going to treat me with decency, like you're going to show me some form of respect, because I feel like that's something he was probably missing throughout his whole life, is being respected in these type of senses or so. Whereas Val seemed like maybe not he would be have an outburst or be like alpha male like in response, but like him smoking the second cigarette at work and the guy coming up and talking to him, like he didn't even turn around and look at him. He just rolled his eyes and he was like, "Can I help you with something?
yeah,
Like, do you want something? Like, what do you want? Like, get away from me." Because he was more defensive, probably more to do with he was already used to his dad beating him growing up. So it's like, what's the worst you're gonna do to me? Like, I don't care to hear you talking. Like, I don't care about the outcome of what happens of what I say. Like, fuck you. Things have already gone bad for me doing things or saying things in my mind. So I'm gonna do or act and say what I want anyway. So I feel like he was more the opposite of Kevin in that sense, where it's like he could stand up for himself, maybe not in the healthiest of ways, but like he definitely could. Whereas Kevin seemed like he kind of needed a steering hand or a backup a lot of his life, or Val, maybe the friend helping him deal with those situations and stuff.
yeah. No, I agreed. Yeah. So let's. I don't know how much longer this is gonna go before we're gonna have to stop and start again. But
Okay.
um, let's just get into that ending, man. That fucking ending is amazing. From the moment they go on the dirt bikes and go through the like the gorge or whatever, which is a beautiful scene, by the way. Them at night riding those dirt bikes, I thought is such a beautiful looking shot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they're in. It looks like they're in like the middle of like a quarry or something, and all the cops are surrounding them, and Kevin's just like, well, here we go. And you're just, and it's so weird because it's like a little silly. Um, and yet the more the scene plays out, like the second they both draw their guns on each other, like my heart is like in my throat, like watching that scene. Like, because it's so intense and you can tell that like, Val is like, I don't want to shoot you, I don't want to die. And Kevin is just like, like, I love you so fucking much, dude. Like, you ready? Go, go. Two. And he's just like, stop. And then when Val is like, I'll fucking fix it, and he puts the gun down and he's like, I want to live and I fucked up today. um I think is beautiful, and you see the realization on Kevin's face, and he's just like, the second he's like, you'll probably get less time if you pin the murder on me.
Mhm.
The first time watching the movie, the second he says that, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what's going on.
Mhm.
Second time watching it, it's like obviously I've kind of prepared myself the whole time. Um, but yeah, once he says like they'll give you less time, and then when he's like, safety's off, because they have that kind of running joke of the safety being on the whole time.
Mhm.
Um, oh my god, so good. And just Val, the what was the name? Jared Carmichael, I think, is the guy who plays Val. His acting in that scene where he's like, Kevin, put your fucking gun down, put your fucking gun down, and then you see the shot, Kevin like shoot himself and everything. Heartbreak.
Yeah, and you know what is what's kind of sad to me too is that they kind of did a mere switch of the character roles from the very first scene where they
Mm-hmm.
have the guns kind of towards each other. Because Val in that moment was like, "I want to die right now," in the very first scene, and he was completely prepared to do it. Whereas Kevin, who has had a lifetime dealing with this, which has its ups and downs. He probably comes in and out of feeling the need to immediately then, because in his mind, he's always feeling that way. So it's kind of like whenever I choose to, I can do it, like type
Right.
thing. It doesn't have to be right now. It's whenever I work my way around to it. Whereas Val was kind of dealing with it from a situational aspect. So he was in that situation right there, being like, now's the time to do it. And
Yeah.
Kevin just wasn't ready at that point. And he's the one that's pretty much not saying anything. Val's like, I love you, man. This, and that, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, pretty much trying to work him up, like, I'm ready. And Kevin ends up being like, nah. Whereas in the final scene, I think throughout the movie and all the things Val's dealing with, the different experiences they go through, Val kind of works himself out of that one mental state where he was like, I'm ready to do it right now. Maybe he's unsure up until that moment, but when it comes down to that moment, now he has the doubt in his mind where he's like, I don't want to do this or so. Whereas Kevin, who had always been doing it or feeling that way, kind of throughout the things they did throughout the movie, pretty much gave him all the reasons like, now is the time to do it. Like, my therapist got shot. I pretty much held up a gas station. Like, I did all these different things. I helped my buddy talk to his dad, even if it didn't go quite too great. Like, he did enough things to go, well, I've always felt this way, and it's always been kind of in the air when, and now we've done all these things. So he was almost happy. He's like, I can for sure do this. Like, I know now is the time. There's no doubt about the timing or so. So Kevin was like fully committed, whereas Val, throughout going through those experiences, kind of like played on his doubt and was like, no, I don't want to do this, which was a complete flop from the beginning.
Well, I mean, it's here, one last thing, and then I'm gonna stop and start this again. But
Okay.
when Val was like, this was one of the best, most fulfilling days I've ever had, and I don't want this to end. And Kevin is like, it's only been this fulfilling because you're not gonna be here tomorrow.
Mm.
Like, you've literally been living the entire day like you're gonna die tomorrow. That's why you were able to do all this stuff. I think that's also kind of a pretty big part of the movie as well, because again, it's as you said, like, you kind of see the shift from both characters, from the first time they were going to shoot themselves to the last time, and just how much they've like just completely just
Mm-hmm.
shifted. Yeah, I
I
think.
want to know who wrote this like screenplay, or is it a book beforehand, or
No, so it's let me see. It was directed by the guy who plays Val, Jared Carmichael.
oh, and you know Jared Carmichael's a comedian, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He's
I
really
find it.
funny too. I've watched that video with like him and Tyler the Creator a bunch of times. Um,
Did that.
and
Yeah, I did that.
the uh the screenplay was written by Ryan Welsh and Ari Ketcher. I don't know who either
Yeah,
of
I've never
them
heard of those names before. Ari's a good screenwriter name, though.
is. Yeah. Right. So, I had a couple more questions. Um, one being, so throughout the movie, Kevin is drinking this bottle of whiskey that Val brought with him. Um, and and you see like Kevin, drinking more and more of it as the day progresses. Do you think Kevin would have still killed himself had he not drank all that liquor throughout the day?
That's a hard question. I'd say maybe no, liquid courage, but then also the idea if he was in the psych ward, he was probably on medication too, which probably flipped in with the alcohol a bit too. I think I think with him processing and thinking about the idea of killing himself for so long and not doing it, he almost needed like an accelerant to kind of get him. Like he already had the mind state for it, but the final kind of push, he needed either external situations, the alcohol, maybe whatever was mixed with it or so. His friend kind of backing him up because, as they showed, like he didn't seem like he stood up or kind of took charge of his life very much without like the help. So maybe the idea that his friend's doing it, he's finally like, yes, yes, this, and that. And then even then, if his friend's trying to help it, and he's the one who's tried to do it before and everything, I think he was like, oh, can't back down, drink a little bit. So I think maybe if he wasn't drinking, things might not have turned out quite the same way. If he maybe would have not killed himself ever in the future, I cannot say. But at least that day, I don't think maybe all those things would have happened.
Right. You think it was almost like that day definitely almost had like a domino effect, and it's like the liquor is kind of like exacerbating every shitty thing that's kind of happening.
Yeah,
It's
and then the fact that Val isn't drinking allowed him to kind of like process everything in a more sober state of mind and kind of be like, oh wait, maybe I was tripping. Maybe I need to relax, take a better sight. And I also think if his chick that he, because I think he said they broke up at the beginning before he found out that
oh
she was
yeah, he
having.
said that he broke up with Tiffany Haddish's character.
Yeah, so I think also if the him having a baby hadn't popped up, maybe he would have stuck with it.
Right.
But I think the idea of having a kid there and then like what his dad did to him was kind of like, oh wow, am I gonna? I mean, obviously it's not the same, but like, am I going to do something like this and have an effect on my child in that same way and like kind of like actions, consequences, that type of thing.
That makes sense. I would probably agree with you on all of that because it definitely seemed like, and again, throughout most of the movie, it feels very much like it could go kind of either way with Val, especially. Um, Again, when on rewatch, you kind of notice that Kevin's progressively getting like worse and worse as the day goes on. Um, and then like the scene where Kevin takes the Jeep and clearly plans on killing that high school bully until he sees the baby
Yeah,
and then pulls away. And like before that is when Kevin was like blasting Papa Roach and was like screaming along to it. And it again, I think it's such a one of my favorite things about this movie is again just how realistically they show people with depression and like suicidal idealizations and everything. Like it's not, as you said, like it's not just sitting in a room and crying. It's like people walk around with these mindsets every single day. And, you might see it, you might not. I think this movie does also a really good job at showing you kind of like the signals. Like, I would say this movie is great for the friend of someone who's like depressed or suicidal. Like, this is a good movie for like the friends to watch because it kind of shows you, like, you can see some of the signs. It does a really realistic job of showing you the signs and everything of someone who is kind of struggling with that kind of stuff.
and I think with Kevin specifically too, just like how we were saying how as the days getting progressively worse and he's doing more things that kind of like kind of back him in the corner of like, I say I want this, I'm doing things to back, almost like he's doing things to make it like, oh, if we're gonna kill somebody or something along those lines, and like I'm gonna have to do it after that. So like, and that could be taken in a less aggressive way, whereas people who maybe self-sabotage, like people who are depressed and people go, oh, well, you have these opportunities, this and that, and then when it comes time to maybe take advantage of those opportunities, they kind of back out or like fail on purpose in a sense. And people go, well, I don't get it because you say you're depressed and everything, and something good finally happens and you just back your way out of it. It's because to them, there's not a single thing that can actually stop their depression. So in a sense, the idea of maybe trying to do something and maybe fear idea that maybe me succeeding in this thing doesn't make me feel better. And now I have responsibilities and now I can't, if I still don't want to be here, now it makes it harder for me to leave. So whereas, and I think that actually for a lot of people who go through depression takes form in a lot smaller ways, like maybe keeping up with the job, keeping up with relationships, being there when they're expected to be there, being there for other people who are having problems or so. Because like I think that's probably a big thing with friends of people who are going through depression is that like, oh, I'm always here for you when you're sad and you're depressed all the time, and then now it's my turn, or like blah blah blah. But it's not a taking turns thing. These people are constantly kind of going through this, and it's like, well, like it's not that they don't want to be there in that sense, but it's like they're still dealing with their own thing. And I say this with I this is gonna sound harsher than I mean it, but to be depressed is unknowingly to be like very, I don't know if I want to say selfish or self-centered, but it's like you can't focus on anything else besides what you're going through. So when it comes to other people who might need your help going through the same thing, those people, though they might understand what somebody else is going through with depression, they're not actually the people who are good to be there for those people because they can maybe understand it and talk you through it, but they can't stop dealing with what they're dealing to help you deal with their thing in a sense. And I feel like that's something that's pretty common.
I would agree. I think the movie does a really good job at kind of showing you, because the movie has kind of a tough job at showing how individualized depression and kind of those mental states are, yet at the same time has to be broad enough that like a bunch of people could relate to it. Um, and so I think that's excellent, like screenwriting and everything.
Oh, I have a question for you. How do you take on how they showed the difference between the upbringing of dealing with depression, whereas Kevin was being seen since he was a child,
Mhm.
medicated since he was a child, has been constantly having to deal with it, talk about it. It's kind of taken on an identity for him in a sense between all these different things, and he's getting what. And he kind of jokes to the psych ward lady in the beginning. He's like, I've been to professionals. This is state run.
Mhm.
He was like, I've been to professionals. They couldn't help me. What do you think you're going to do for me? This is state run. Like, what do you give a fuck? Blah, blah. So that would be someone who's getting at least all the readily available things that could maybe help or try to help, which actually in turn in his mind made it worse. And then there's Val on the other end who bottled up all this shit, did not tell the people. They make several things between his girlfriend and Kevin saying, like, you're not even going to open up now. We're going to die today. Like, you can't open up right now, blah, blah, blah. And him pretty much not getting any of that help, holding it in and just kind of letting it simmer, deal with it on his own. How do you think that kind of plays out? Like, or how do you think that did a good job of describing that?
I mean, I think it did a really good job showing that these were, two childhood friends that both clearly suffer from some sort of issues, mentally and emotionally. I do think it's interesting in Kevin's case because, like as you said, it kind of like the depression almost kind of took on a life of its own because he's been hearing his whole life essentially, you're depressed, you're fucked up, you have these problems ever since he was a kid. And then
Mhm.
being force fed pills and everything is like, yeah, I would say that definitely played a huge factor. And then I do think in the sense of Val, it was um the way I read it was Val was basically told or kind of like shown or whatever to like kind of like keep your feelings to yourself.
Almost
Like
like the man up, the old stereotype
yeah,
man up type shit.
yeah. Like, keep your feelings to yourself. No one, no one's gonna care how depressed a man is, sort of thing. And so why I think that's why they changed, because it feels like Val basically got fed up in the moment and then sort of realized that like being fed up was actually a healthy thing and now I can grow and learn from it. Whereas
Hmm.
Kevin was like, I've been dealing with this my whole life and it hasn't gotten better, and people are only treating me worse, essentially, because of how his depression has basically turned into just what people know about him. They know him as this manic, scared, kind of wild, depressed man. Um, so yeah, if I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, no, it does. And like I'll like I'm not to say one way is better because obviously Kevin does end up killing himself, and he, like I said, he did. Well, from what seems on paper, get all the readily access available of what could be considered help to try and help him. And then Val obviously took the more, I guess I don't want to say toxic, but more unhealthy way of handling it with it, just not talking about it. But it almost kind of makes me think of taking a combination of both of their growing ups or childhoods that holding it in is not quite the answer, but also focusing on it and constantly being brought and making it your identity is not the answer either.
Oh,
Almost like if you're able to get it out and try and grow from it in healthy ways without it being force fed with pills and people who don't know you and doctors trying to make different things, but then also not just holding it in until you're an adult and pretty much crashing out type shit and everything. Like, not saying that's the answer, but could be more of a healthy way of, because to me, that seems what Val gets all that out, and maybe that doesn't mean he wants to go talk to people about his problems for the rest of his life or anything, but at
right.
least being able to deal with some of those things he was dealing with and at least get it off his chest, at least gave him a moment of clarity to where he was like, well, me doing all those things gave me the best day of my life. And maybe because we thought we were going to die might have been the reason to spawn all those things. But now that I know there's a way I could feel better or maybe do these things, and now dying doesn't seem like the answer.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I think me and my coworker were actually kind
Which
of
again,
talking.
it's different to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, my coworker and I were talking about this today a little bit of I think talking about what you're feeling and what's going on is good until it isn't. Like I think it's good to,
Mm-hmm.
kind of open up and share how you feel, but I think if you're excessively doing that and you're constantly thinking about how you feel, you're going to make yourself always depressed because you're constantly in this state now. So it is kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I don't think holding it in is good, but I do think there's certain cases where it's like, if you're feeling this way, maybe just kind of vibe it out for a minute and that feeling might change. Um, and I think that's sort of where Val and Kevin sort of sit, where like in Val's case, it's like, had you just sort of like sat and chilled out for a couple of hours, maybe it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have felt so drastic. And then with the case of Kevin, it's like maybe if you weren't constantly reminded that you've tried to kill yourself and that you have all these idealizations, maybe if you weren't constantly reminded and constantly talking about it, that maybe you would have started feeling a little bit better because just something else to focus on.
Yeah. And like with Val in a sense too, like I feel like, and like you said, yeah, talking about things all the time, sitting on them, focusing on them, that's not really gonna help. But I feel like it did a good way of describing how if you do sit on these things, how like drastic of a response, because it will eventually come up. You can't just ignore things. So when it does come out, it's going to be that much more drastic. Whereas, like you said, on Kevin's aspect, if you're constantly around those type of things and like even you crashing out or like doing something crazy, it's almost like expected. And you're like, you're supposed to do that. So even then, you're not getting anything out of it, even if like you don't succeed. Like the chick was like, he was like, oh, I feel like I have a whole new outlook on life, this, and that. And the second one lady was like, you tried to kill yourself 3 days ago. And he was like, well, damn. Like, even if he wasn't just trying to bullshit his way out of the hospital, like, if someone is saying that type of stuff, being like, oh, well, you just tried to kill yourself 3 days ago, isn't isn't very helpful, like
Oh
at
yeah.
all.
That's
You know,
some that's like saying like, oh no, like I feel better, and someone just being like, no, you don't. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so that's a little weird for sure. Um, I yeah, so before we close this out, um as I think I've said, I don't know if I said it on here, but one of my favorite movies of all time is SLC Punk.
Hmm.
This movie kind of hits me in a very similar way to SLC Punk. It's obviously very different stories, um, but I kind of like the attitude of the movie, and
The
obviously the ending with the best friend dying and everything is
Mhm.
this movie hits me in a very similar way that SLC Punk does.
I can kind of see that from the friendship dynamic in the ending because, like, so the main character played by Matthew Lillard in Salt Lake City Punk is angsty. He's not happy about life, but at the same time, he thinks he's a poser to talk about anything. So he's kind of like Val in the character of like, I'm holding everything in. He's kind of putting on a front. He's punk, so he's supposed to feel that way, so on and so forth. Heroin Bob is kind of like the more I'm gonna say exactly how I'm feeling type thing, this and that, which again, different stories, so it's hard to put an exact parallel between them. But in that same sense, Kevin will be the person like I am open about what I'm feeling. I'm doing all these type of things, and it takes the best friend who is the open person about how they're feeling dying for the other person to go, oh shit, like maybe I've had the wrong outtake on life. I see things a little differently through the death of my best friend. That things don't have to be angry or upsetting all the time. I don't have to live in this feeling type thing. So I can definitely see that.
Um, yeah, so I mean, this movie on the count of three has easily become one of my probably my top five favorite movies of all time. It is a movie that I can't rewatch very often because it is again that ending is a fucking gut punch.
Would you say
Um,
it's triggering?
it's definitely a little triggering. I remember the first time watching it, and it fucked my headspace up for a couple of days after that. Like I emotionally was not okay after
Mm-hmm.
I watched this movie for the first time. The second time, I'm like, all right, I know what to expect. I'm prepared. I can handle it. And again, it made for a much more I don't want to say enjoyable, but it did. It made for a better watch the second time around.
I will
Um
say the both times I watched it, I've been a I don't want to say better, but like I wasn't at lower points of my life, or not saying that's what you were saying, but like in general, like I feel like I was able to watch it more of like I don't want to say nostalgic, but almost look back and be like, I remember thinking in similar ways to this. I remember being in situations similar to this of like just how they were feeling to lead them to certain things. Not to say I've done crazy things like that, but like, but in that sense, I could look at it and almost be like more introspective and be like, I can remember, I can relate, and I'm not saying what's right or wrong about it, but I can almost look back and be like, almost like I don't want to say grown up, but it's like because I like again, I still go through periods of depression and stuff like that and everything. But like, if I'm not if I were to watch it in a depressed mode or a low mode of my life, I could see me taking or hanging on certain words and scenes in a very different way. And I could still, if I watch it and I'm not in that low mode, I could still see and relate and pinpoint those angles. But I could look at it with a little more of a 50-50 kind of like I could see being depressed and seeing this and taking it one way. I could see being happy and taking it one way, but me kind of being in the middle, I feel like I was able to watch it a little more biasly without getting as kind of like connected to it in that same sense to where it made me feel very emotional about it, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, I agree. I do not think this is a movie you should watch if you're like actively very depressed. I
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this is a safe movie for you to watch if you're in the same mindset as these two characters. I think it could be very detrimental. I think otherwise, like as if you just are someone that enjoys indie movies, if you're someone that enjoys movies with kind of darker, kind of nihilistic subject matter like this, it's great. As I said, I think it's a really good movie for the friends of depressed and suicidal people. If you're someone that, has lost friends, which you and I have both lost friends,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you're someone that knows people or has friends that are depressed or have, tried to, have attempted to commit suicide or anything like that, I do think this is a very important movie for them to watch because I do think this is a movie that very realistically and very deliberately shows you warning signs in people.
Yeah, and I think specifically too the underlying thing that goes along with what you're saying is that if people who have friends that are depressed take this and maybe take the suicide part out of it in their mind, could still look for those same things because there's a lot of people who may not be suicidal but put themselves on destructive paths and do destructive things that could end up killing them, and they might not be saying I want to die right now or I'm choosing to kill myself, but are displaying signs and doing things like maybe drug use or like drinking and driving or putting themselves in dangerous situations just because of a lack of care for themselves from depression. It doesn't always have to come out as I'm suicidal, but it could also come out in all these different things that people are seeing because I mean, yeah, it could be easy to say like, oh, someone's just a drug addict, this, or that, or like something along those lines. But it's like, no, these people are depressed and it takes something to get them to this point in their life. And yeah, they could harm themselves or die from their actions without it being a purposeful suicide. But in the same sense, display itself in the same ways as, say, Val holding things in and then randomly crashing out, or say someone like Kevin who's kind of constantly in this mode where it's kind of like his identity, everyone knows this about him type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. It's like, yeah, like Val crashed out once, Kevin's like basically a constant crash out. And so it's yeah, I think it's like if as you said, take the suicide part of it out and just look at the depression. Like even notice how like Val, especially in the beginning, is super apathetic towards like everything. Like he just doesn't fucking care anymore. But then you see Kevin, who's like, oh, like what's wrong? Like like you shouldn't be feeling this way and everything like that. Even though that Kevin just tried to kill himself 3 days ago, and he's like cheer up his friend and stuff. So yeah, I think, as I said, I think this movie is super important. Um, but I do think it's a movie that you need to watch in the right headspace.
Oh, another good parallel off what you were just saying too between Kevin and Val is that, like you said, Kevin just 3 days ago tried to kill himself, and he's the one that's known for depression. But when he's around his friend, someone he's comfortable around with, he's seems to be in a great cheery mood.
Right.
And people could see that and go, well, you're always happy around me. Why are you always talking about depression and wanting to kill yourself or like doing these different things? And they're not getting that all the people he's around, he's facing kind of the suicide depression type thing, and it's putting him in that mode. So for him to get around somebody where he could just be himself, it actually comes out that freeing. And then Val, on the other hand, not saying he's always like that, but for him, he's not going around telling everybody he's depressed. He's not known for that. His baby mama, his job, none of these people really get that. But to him, he gets to be that opposite where I'm going to be nihilistic or down or apathetic, as you were saying, around this friend because he understands this type of thing. So it's kind of them acting like the real selves, which to the world, they would think the opposite of each person type thing.
Oh yeah, I mean there is a beautiful acceptance between these two friends where they do wholeheartedly, fully accept each other for who they are, apathy, depression, and all. Like they very clearly care about each other, which the friendship dynamic between these two is amazing. Like I love their friendship.
And I know I was joking about like, oh, I thought it was funny how like they were able to talk shit to each other, but it's also the type of thing where the type of shit they were talking to each other, only they're allowed to kind of do that to each other because they actually understand each other. And it's like from somebody else saying something like that to say Kevin or whatever, like he might take it as a personal affront, be like, you don't understand my shit, blah, 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 fuck that person, this, and that. Whereas to Val, Val saying it, he's almost like, well, I've told you these things, you know these things about me. I accept them as true as well too. And I know you're not saying this to be mean, like you're just pretty much accepting me for who I am and giving me shit like a friend would in the way you know about the things you know about me type thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Like I think one of the funniest lines of the movie is when they're at the diner and as Val's leaving, he's like, you shit yourself when you die, right? And he just like walks out.
And Kevin really wanted to go there, and they get there, and Val goes, "I fucking hate this place."
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, oh my gosh, I love their friendship so much.
Or when he's robbing the shit, or I know it's a little off, but when he's like technically robbing the gas station, and he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He's like, "Whatever, man. Just you want anything?" He goes, "Blues, bitch." And so,
Pack of Blues.
like, it's like I'm still mad at you, but yeah, I want some Camel Blues.
Yeah. Uh, so funny. Yeah, no, this movie, um, yeah, before we close out, I just I love this movie. I think everyone should watch this movie. Just watch it in the right headspace. Um, but so overall, the question of will it be a classic? I think so. I think in the oncoming years, I think more and more people are going to discover this movie, and I think especially because Christopher Abbott, the guy who plays Kevin, he's got a pretty big career going now. Like he's about to be in the new Wolfman movie and everything.
Mm.
Um, so he's becoming a pretty popular uh, actor. And then obviously, Jared Carmichael is people know him. He's pretty popular. So I think just in time, I think this movie is going to garner a lot more popularity and respect.
I agree, and also too, like until you said that name, like I knew he looked familiar, but I could not. I know Jared Michael as the comedian in that documentary type TV show he has on HBO, but like I knew him, but when you said that, I was like, interesting. Like I wouldn't have pinned him to do a movie like this, and I will say it'd probably be classy too, because I think a big role with a lot of indie movies, not all, but like, is kind of them being good think pieces.
Oh yeah,
Like it's
100%.
not just the movie, but it's also you sit there and you think about it, you kind of dissect everything, and kind of like how you were saying, you kind of related to Salt Lake City Punk in a certain type of way, and I could use that in the same parallel. And I know this isn't really an indie movie, but the same way I watch Salt Lake City Punk is almost like the same way I can watch Fight Club, and depending on what mood I'm in, I will take something different from it every time. So if I watch Fight Club and I'm not in like a bad mood or something like that, I could be like, "Oh, I remember kind of thinking like that. I can understand that mind instead of thinking. It still makes me think." But then if I'm down, I'll be like hanging on every word. I'm like, "I am Bob's tea stained shirt or whatever the fuck." Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I do wonder if like I think back to, when like you and I were like 17 or whatever, and we were watching SLC Punk and Animal Room and stuff.
I haven't thought of that in forever.
I still think about that movie all the fucking time. Um, but I wonder, like, do you think if this movie had come out in like 2010 or something, and we had watched it at 17 years old, do you think this movie would have hit us harder or not as hard?
Uh, hmm. I don't think it would have the impact on us that it would have today as far as the think piece part of it. I think we would have kind of just like absorbed it into our personality at the moment, or not
Yeah.
personality, but the emotions we were having and feelings and stuff. Do I think we would have done a suicide pact? No,
No, no,
no,
no,
no, no,
not
no.
like that. But I could definitely see it taking a lot of the characters and sort of taking on their personalities a little bit for sure.
Or like at least using like the thought pieces we learned, or like certain lines, and being like insert in the day, because right now this situation it relates. And I was just kind of giving that shitty look of like, you right, fuck you though, but you right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, this would definitely be a movie that I feel like you and I would like probably have used on each other a bunch of times.
Like you get a real Kevin right now, bitch.
For sure. Definitely. I would have been like, I'd just be like, all right, Val.
But I will tell you what, I even quit vaping, but this movie the whole time I was like, damn, I want a cigarette.
Oh God, dude, smoking so many cigarettes. I'm like, that was the other thing that I was like, I think I'm kind of like Val in that sense because I'd be smoking cigarettes.
And you know, I think the one thing this movie was not missing to make it a good movie, but missing to where we would have even more drawn on it at 17. If they were using drugs the whole time, we would have been like,
Oh
ah.
yeah, if it had turned into a drug movie, I think it as adolescents or whatever, you and I probably would have latched onto it a lot more. But as an adult, I respect the fact that
That they didn't. Yeah,
that they didn't. That the
because they
only
were
thing is just
so.
Kevin drinking, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
And you know, and I noticed him drinking, but you know, until you pointed it out, I never really thought throughout the movie that he was actually like fucked up or anything like that. But like when you pointed out, I was like, oh, he is just straight chugging the whiskey bottle like while driving into something. Like he is, but it's not like they make it to where like they're never like, oh, you're drunk, Kevin, or like he's like slopping or falling or slurring his words. So like I like how they put it in there and it's an aspect of it, but they don't focus on it to go, oh, he was just drunk the whole time or some shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say. I fucking love this movie.
Good pick. Good pick.
Hell yeah. As I've said, I think everyone should watch this movie. I think this movie is a good lesson in empathy and sympathy and friendship. You know, even if you take the suicide out of it, I still think it's a great, amazing movie about two friends. Um, so Tyler, thanks for coming on here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Always fucking awesome talking to you.
Yes, of course.
Now that I've kind of figured Zoom out a little bit, I know you and I have had a couple of ideas in the last couple of years of some endeavors that we wanted to try. So
we'll have to redo that one.
oh yeah, we will. But
a little less personal this time, but
yeah. But I do think that now we'll be able to kind of work on some of these other endeavors that you and I had planned. So yeah, I mean, do you have anything else that you want to say before we close out?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all.
Oh yeah. Well, so thank you to anyone and everyone that decided to watch this. Will it be a classic film section? Other stuff is going up on this channel all the time now. Thankfully, we're kind of back.
Yeah, hit the like and subscribe, bitches.
Yeah, hit the like and subscribe. All fucking 5 of you people that watch these videos. But yeah, we'll see you guys next time.